The global diabetes industry is worth over $1 trillion a year. Insulin alone generates more revenue than the entire GDP of some nations. And yet right now, over 500 million people on this planet are living with blood sugar they cannot control. The numbers keep rising. The prescriptions keep multiplying. There are more than 400 peer-reviewed clinical studies published in journals you've heard of, documenting plants that measurably lower fasting blood glucose. Not theories, not folklore. Measured in labs, on humans. 3 of those plants are so common, so overlooked, so embarrassingly accessible that when you find out what they are, you're going to feel a little cheated that nobody told you sooner. It's 1972. A laboratory in Lahore, Pakistan. A pharmacologist named Dr. Akhtar Siddiqui is doing something that would get him laughed out of most Western universities at the time. He is boiling vegetables. Specifically, he's boiling the extract of a fruit that local healers had used for generations to treat what they called sweet urine disease. His colleagues called the project a waste of grant money. His results? A 54% reduction in fasting blood glucose in animal subjects. That number silenced the room. But Lahore was not alone. In the same decade, researchers in India, China, and rural Greece were arriving at the same crossroads: ancient plants, modern lab equipment, and results that challenged everything the pharmaceutical pipeline had taught them. What they found, what took decades to slowly leak into mainstream journals, is the subject of this video. You've seen this before, maybe in a Caribbean grocery, maybe trailing up a fence in the Philippines, maybe labeled something you didn't recognize at a farmer's market. That lumpy, warty, intensely green fruit that nobody seems to know what to do with. People in India, Southeast Asia, and East Africa have used bitter melon to manage blood sugar for over 2,000 years. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine classified it as a primary remedy for madhumeha, the Sanskrit term for diabetes, long before insulin was synthesized. Now here comes the science punch. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that bitter melon juice taken daily for 4 weeks reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of 29 milligrams DL in type 2 diabetic patients. That is clinically meaningful, not modest, meaningful. The mechanism? Bitter melon contains at least 3 active compounds, charantin, vicine, and a protein called polypeptide P that mimic insulin and activate glucose uptake in cells independently of the pancreas. Practically, the most studied delivery method is fresh juice, about 50 to 100 milliliters daily, taken on an empty stomach in the morning. If the taste defeats you, capsule extracts standardized to 5% charantin are widely available and show comparable results in smaller studies. Here's the fact that surprises almost everyone. Bitter melon doesn't just lower blood sugar. A 2021 study found it also reduced HbA1c, your long-term blood sugar marker, by up to 0.25% over 12 weeks. That's approaching the effect range of low-dose metformin. Walk into any Indian kitchen, smell that slightly bitter, maple-like warmth in the spice drawer. That's fenugreek. Small, golden, almost criminally underestimated. Greek physicians used fenugreek medicinally in 1000 BCE. Ancient Egyptian medical papyri, some of the oldest medical documents in existence, list it as a treatment for fever and blood conditions. For over 3 millennia, healers across continents independently arrived at the same plant. The science is extraordinary. A landmark study out of the University of New Delhi gave diabetic patients 25 grams of fenugreek seed powder daily. After 24 weeks, fasting blood glucose dropped by an average of 54 milligrams DL. Total cholesterol dropped simultaneously. The researchers called it a significant hypoglycemic effect. The hero compound is 4-hydroxyisoleucine, an amino acid found almost exclusively in fenugreek, which directly stimulates insulin secretion from pancreatic beta cells. It also slows the absorption of glucose in the gut by increasing the viscosity of digested food through its high soluble fiber content. How to use it? Soak 1 tablespoon of seeds overnight in half a glass of water, then drink the water and the seeds first thing in the morning. Alternatively, add ground fenugreek to yogurt, soup, or smoothies. It takes about 2 to 4 weeks of consistent use to see measurable shifts in fasting numbers. The surprise fact: fenugreek seed extract has been shown in a 2020 study to reduce cravings for high-fat, high-sugar foods by modulating appetite hormones, which means it doesn't just lower existing blood sugar, it may reduce the behavior that spikes it. Now we arrive at the one that made the pharmaceutical world genuinely uncomfortable. Berberine is not a plant itself, it's a compound. But it comes from a plant you can grow in your own backyard in the US, UK, and Canada. Barberry, that spiny shrub with small red berries that most people treat as an ornamental. Barberry has been used in Persian, Chinese, and Ayurvedic medicine for at least 3,000 years. In traditional Chinese medicine, berberine-rich plants were a standard treatment for infections and metabolic disorders, which, in hindsight, is remarkably prescient. The science punch on berberine is the one that changed the conversation. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology, pooling 27 clinical trials involving 2,569 patients, found that berberine reduced fasting blood glucose by 15–20% and HbA1c by 0.5–1.5%. The same meta-analysis placed its effect statistically on par with metformin. That last sentence bears repeating. A natural compound from a backyard shrub, performing comparably to one of the world's most prescribed diabetes medications in pooled human clinical data. Berberine works through a mechanism called AMPK activation, the same cellular pathway that metformin targets. It essentially flips a metabolic switch that tells your cells to absorb glucose more efficiently. It also slows carbohydrate absorption in the gut, reduces glucose production in the liver, and improves insulin sensitivity. Practical use: berberine is most commonly taken as a 500 mg supplement 3 times daily with meals. Barberry root bark tea is an alternative, though the concentration varies significantly. Clinical effects typically emerge within 4 to 8 weeks of consistent use. The shocking fact: berberine has demonstrated anti-inflammatory properties in pancreatic tissue, meaning it may actually help protect the insulin-producing beta cells that diabetes progressively destroys. It's not just managing symptoms, it may be interrupting the damage. Precise about what the science actually says, because precision matters when your health is involved. Bitter melon's active compounds charantine, polypeptide P, and vicine work through 3 separate pathways simultaneously. Charantine activates glucose transporter proteins. Polypeptide P has direct insulin-like activity. Vicine triggers glycogen storage in muscle tissue. This multi-pathway action is why single-compound drugs often can't replicate the full effect. Fenugreek's 4-hydroxyisoleucine has been isolated and studied independently. At doses found in 2 teaspoons of seeds, it produced a measurable increase in insulin secretion in pancreatic cell cultures within 90 minutes. Its soluble fiber, specifically galactomannan, forms a gel in the digestive tract that physically slows glucose absorption, reducing post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 13% in clinical trials. Berberine's AMPK activation has now been confirmed in over 50 independent studies across multiple countries. In a head-to-head comparison published in Metabolism Journal in 2008, berberine, 500 mg, 3x daily, was compared directly to metformin, 500 mg, 3x daily in 116 patients. HbA1c reduction: berberine, -2%, metformin, -1.8%. The difference was not statistically significant. These are not fringe studies. These are not cherry-picked anecdotes. These are peer-reviewed, published, reproducible results that any physician can look up. There is a fourth plant, one that most Westerners have growing wild in their front yards, pulling it up as a weed every spring, that outperformed bitter melon in head-to-head animal studies for post-meal glucose spikes. Its active compound was isolated by researchers at the University of Windsor and is now being studied as a potential precursor to a new class of diabetes drugs. And it grows where you walk your dog. If you want that video, and we're building it now, the only way to make sure you get it is to follow this channel, not for our sake. Because the algorithm won't show it to you unless you tell it you care. Subscribe and turn on notifications. That's the whole trick. We're also building a complete series on every major condition: blood pressure, liver repair, nerve damage, cholesterol, all with the same research standard you saw today. This is one piece of a much larger picture. Here's what tomorrow morning can look like if you take this seriously. Start with fenugreek water, 1 tablespoon of seeds soaked overnight, consumed first thing on an empty stomach. Add bitter melon juice or capsule extract to your morning routine, 50 milliliters of fresh juice or 1 standardized capsule. If your numbers warrant it, discuss berberine supplementation, 500 milligrams with meals, with your healthcare provider, particularly if you are already managing type 2 diabetes. Track your fasting blood glucose. Give it 4 weeks before expecting dramatic shifts. Your body is not a light switch, it's a system that responds to consistent input over time. Now an honest word. Everything in this video reflects real, published science, but science is not the same as medical advice. If you are currently on diabetes medication, do not stop, reduce, or change your dose without working with your doctor. These plants can lower blood glucose, which means they can also interact with existing medications in ways that require monitoring. This is not a replacement for care. It is information that you now own that you can bring into a conversation with someone who knows your full health picture. Blood sugar control is not a mystery that belongs only to labs and prescription pads. The evidence is there. These plants are real, the research is available, and you now know where to start.